You are about to learn something that I am like so thrilled about, because it's something that I've wanted to learn, and it's like a big problem that I have. And Carol Peebles is going to solve it for us today. Carol, what are you going to teach us?
Well, today I'm going to talk to you about how to get a likeness when you're doing a portrait without drawing the eyes, nose, and mouth.
You're solving a huge problem, because one of the biggest problems we all have is, we might get a nice drawing, but we don't get a good likeness. And likeness is so important, and I struggle with that. I know a lot of people do. So we are very excited about this segment. So let's get the show started. We'll be right back with Carol Peebles.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes.
Hey there, welcome to Art School Live. I'm Eric from Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and a bunch of other stuff, conferences, artist retreats, videos, stuff. As a matter of fact, we have hundreds of art instruction videos from the top masters in the world that are professionally produced, and extreme zoom, extreme close-up, not done on Zoom. And so what you see today is not that, but we do get in touch with lots of artists. We introduce you to artists that we know and that you need to know. And today you're going to meet Carol Peebles. And Carol is an incredible artist in New Orleans, and she is outstanding. You're going to learn about portraiture today, but you're going to learn a little bit about how to get a likeness, which is really important. So before we do that, though, we have a prize for you today. If you leave a comment in the comments section, no matter where you are in the world, and we have people watching from, 100 countries, you will win a chance to win a pair of value specs. Value specs help you see your values. One of the most essential things when learning to draw or paint is understanding values. And these are kind of a way to cheat and learn it, because what I do is I put them on. I think my values are right. I put them on and check my values, and they're all wrong. And so this helps me. So we're going to give away a pair of those today. You've got to leave a comment, and we will pick somebody from either the live or the replay or both. The winner of our prize from the other day was Kathy Prince in Trussville, Alabama, and she won the Plein Air Magazine apron. We have a really terrific gift for you today: 10 steps to become a high-level portrait and figure artist. And you can get that free ebook at realismlive.com/ebook. Write that down, get it. And also, if you don't mind, go ahead and subscribe to this broadcast. We're here every weekday at 12 noon, and you can find us on YouTube. And if you go to YouTube and you put in Art School Live, follow us and then subscribe, all right? Or hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell, the notification. That way you'll get your subscription. And please follow on Instagram and Facebook. That would be really cool too. Now we're going to get back to our guest, get right into it. Our guest is Carol Peebles, a fabulous artist in New Orleans. Carol, welcome to Art School Live.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
You are really a very accomplished artist, and it's a pleasure to meet you. I know we're going to have you on the Realism Live broadcast coming up in November, but let's find out how to get a likeness today. Go ahead and take it away.
Okay, great to be here. Thank you. So let's just talk about getting the structure of the head. I find that the most common challenge or mistake that students do is when they're drawing a portrait, they just start drawing eyes, nose, and mouth. So a good rule of thumb is to begin by getting a sense of proportion on the model. So I use this quadrant sheet. And when you're looking at the model, assuming you're working with a live model, you just place the model's head in the first two quadrants, so that's your head length, and then you mark those on the side. So here I have a kind of an unfinished demo of a model, and the highest quadrant is here, and the chin is here, and then you find where the middle is. And in general, the middle is going to be somewhere around the eyes if you're eye level with your model. But what you want to do is just get very specific about where that is, if it's the top of the eye or the bottom of the eye. So that gets your overall setup, and then get one head length down.
So the eyes are typically about the halfway between the circle of the head.
Yeah, more or less. And then you just kind of figure out exactly how it's different on that model just by that little bit. But that little bit is important because that's what helps to get a likeness. I'm just
Right.
going to pull this a little bit closer so you can see
Okay.
the drawing.
Terrific. Okay, so pull out your little tool again because I want to understand that a little bit more. You
Okay.
have so you will hold that up when you're looking at a model, and you'll place that so that the top of that white sheet is the top of the head.
Yeah, I'm trying to fit it in the camera. So you see how I'm pulling it back and forth?
Yeah,
I tell students to do it. It's like playing a trombone. You move it
yeah.
back and forth until it fits in. And the reason for this is so that when you're observing nature, you have a guideline. You're not guessing. Artists want to just look and guess and look and guess. And then what they're doing is having to redraw everything all the time. So if you have this as a guide, then you can be certain this is my highest perimeter, my lowest perimeter, the middle. So that,
Okay, so on that particular white thing where your thumb is, or was, the second mark, is that the mark for the eyes?
well, as an artist, you control and decide how you want to arrange it. But what I do and what I teach my students is that the first two quadrants are the head length, and you kind of fit the model's head in the first two quadrants. And then
Okay,
the next two quadrants are just, one head length down. And what that does is it helps you get the proportion of the neck and the shoulders and the gesture, which is a very important part of portraiture, getting a sense of the person. So,
that's a very helpful tool. Thank you.
yeah, I really find it's helpful. So anyway, that's just getting the basics down. And then when you get into features, which is what I want to talk about today, how to get a likeness without actually drawing the eyes, nose, and mouth. The first thing to know is just in general portraiture, within our species, you can see that in general for all of us, bottom of the nose to bottom of the chin is in general more or less the same as bottom of the nose to the brow, and then more or less the same the brow to the hairline. So that's what's taught a lot. But what I like to do, and I think is so important, is to not always impose that. A lot of times artists impose that, and then the problem is that the work looks generic. It's all Barbie and Ken. So what you want to do is measure from the bottom of the nose on your live model and then see where that brings you. And sometimes it's a little above the brow and sometimes, a little below, but it's that little difference that is going to get you a likeness on the model.
Well, I'll tell you, you lost me on that, and I'm going to have to come back to that. So we're gonna go through that again. Give me an example with a different drawing, perhaps.
Okay, well, can you see this right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this one has all the lines kind of explaining what I'm talking about. So what I'm doing here is measuring bottom of the nose to bottom of the chin on this demo. And then
Yeah.
if I bring it up one measurement, you see it brings me just above the eyebrow.
Yeah.
And then if I bring it one more, it brings me actually above the head. So on this person, this would be a good example of how it's not evenly broken up. Here on this example, it's exactly what the stereotype is, but this one's a little bit different. So the first measurement brings us above the brow, and then so this measurement is just a little different every time. So I get students to have some foundation of that before they draw out the nose, and then they know that the nose is long enough or short enough. And then once you get your thirds, that's where we start to consider the skull.
All right, now I'm going to challenge you on this because I'm confused, and I'm confused. Of course, I'm the most confusable of anyone watching. But do you have a piece of paper you can pull out?
Yes.
Okay. And maybe you're going to do that anyway. But what I'd like to understand is if I'm first sketching in the head, so I'm making the shape of the head, and and the typical way we look at it is we make the shape of the head, then we cut it in half, and that's where roughly the eyes go, right? And then take me from that step then to what you were just describing, because I think what you're saying is the architecture of every human face is going to be different. Some are going to be longer faces, some are going to be shorter, etc. And I need to understand a little bit more about how you're using that measurement from the bottom half.
Okay, so if we look at these two examples, on this particular model, this is the, generally speaking, what you'll find on people is bottom of the nose to chin, this measurement here.
Yeah.
In general, brings us to the brow. See, it's coming to her brow.
Yeah.
And then if we do it one more time, it's close to the hairline. So what we're doing is trying to figure out the little difference that there is in every person when we're drawing. So in this particular one down here, notice, can you see my hand? If I'm measuring bottom of the nose to bottom of her chin,
Just barely, yeah.
and then I bring it up one more time, it brings us above the brow,
Right.
right there. So that line, and then this one's above the hairline. So what I
Okay.
do is make those 3 marks, and then that helps me set the eye sockets and the larger planes of the face. And then we know that in general, the masses of the features are going to be aligned to get
So you're
that
such a
focus.
good teacher, but I'm going to ask you another question. So in that middle quadrant, bottom of the nose to above the brows in that particular instance, if you see that the brow line is lower than where it normally is, then you're making a secondary mark there, or what are you doing to make sure that you get it in the right place? Or is it just you're making a notation for your own brain?
Well, I just mark the thirds where those are. And
Yeah.
then when I have those lines placed, then that helps me decide how big the socket's going to be. Because we already know the midpoint is the eye, and the perimeter top to bottom. So it helps guide me as to how big the socket or the temple, all that's going to be, which leads me to the next part that I wanted to talk about, which is the planes of the face and how it leads you to the features themselves.
So would you explain, because we have a lot of people watching that are, this is terminology is something they might not understand. So could you explain what a plane is? I mean, I know we're going to fly in one soon.
Okay, I'm going to put this right here. So yes, so the planes of the face are basically just the superficial form and how it's receiving light. So again, a beginner wants to go in there and draw eyes, nose, and mouth, but what we want to do is draw the shapes of light on the form of the head. So with this example, on this model, you can see how just in general, all of this is receiving light, and then all this area is receiving less light.
So if you were to consider that, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but I try to be an interpreter for the novices. So if you were to look at that head and say, this is a ball, and there's a light in the upper right-hand corner coming down, that light is catching on that ball.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Well put. So what we do is starting out with the idea of a ball and then breaking it down into the smaller shapes and how they're receiving or not receiving light. And if you can focus on that, here's a little example of the skull. You can see obviously there's no features, but we get a sense of the light on the face, and down here there's very little light. So this is what's going to get you understanding the skull and the superficial landmarks on the face is what's going to get you a likeness rather than a really well drawn out feature.
All right, now I'm going to step in for just a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure for our beginners, and I hope that I'm not dumbing this down too much for some people, but this is a model, planes of the head. This is the planes of the body. But the idea is that, some of these planes are catching the light because, it's flat to the light right there. Some of them are in shade. So if you were to take the face and or the body and turn it into straight chiseled marks, that way you can see how the light is hitting, where it's dark in the eye sockets, where it's underneath, and so on. Carol, I think you explained it well, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood what planes are.
Okay, wonderful.
You're awesome.
So are you. So the next step, And the most important part about setting up so that you're comfortable with starting the features are the spaces in between. That's what I want to talk to you about today. So this is, instead of drawing the eye right here, what I tell students to do is draw this space in between, which is called the glabella. And it's just the space in between the eyes. And this is different on everyone. And what we have a tendency to do is draw one eye, finish it, and then draw the other eye. But it's the relationship of both eyes together and that spacing that's going to give you the feeling of the eyes and the correct proportion. So it's after the brow bone and before the nasal bone, this little turn, where that turns on the model in relation to the eyelid is what's different on everyone. So you want to, when you draw that, look at the eye and look at that area of the face. And that area, again, it's called the glabella. That bone region is going to help settle the eyes. And you want to draw the glabella and then the temple. These are two things that students overlook. If you can get the width and height of the temple, and then the width and height of the glabella, then the space that's left over, you can be confident that that's exactly where the eye has to be.
I
So it's,
struggle with that. That's a hard one for me. The glabella, I always get it wrong. So you're saying that one of the keys is the relationship of how it lands in relationship to where the eye is.
yes, exactly. You want to find if there's a value change or a light change somewhere on the glabella, and then say, well, where is that in relation to the eyelid, or whatever it might be from your angle. And that's going to really get a nice sense of both the eye and the nose, because it's kind of bringing them together. And you can see down here on the little drawing I have of a skull, this is the region that I'm talking about. And then it leads us to the nasal bone. So the next step after you get the glabella and the temple is to come down here and not draw the nose, but draw this area, which is called the philtrum. And that's just the space in between the nose and the mouth. And again, I like to teach in terms of common mistakes or challenges, because students know they're told what to do, but if they're told what not to do, I think that that's even more helpful. So when you're drawing the mouth, what not to do is to stare at the lips and just draw the lips perfectly. What you want to do is discover where the lips are within the lower half of the head. So to do that, you would set the philtrum, again, this area in between the nose and the mouth, and the space in between the chin and the lips. And if you can get, just decide, which one of those three is bigger, and get the proportion of this breakup, then the lower half of the mouth will, of the head will already start looking like the person.
So would you say that, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, it's good.
Want to dig into this. So in your skull drawing below, essentially there's not a nose on that because the nose is soft cartilage. And so what you're basically saying is if you go from the bottom of where the nose would be and you follow along that skull, that's the shape you're kind of looking for. You're not putting lips in yet. You're just kind of going from there and then down below to where the chin line is. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. And on some people, this area, again, it's called the philtrum. The area on some people is very wide and flat. And then on other people, it can be very, very short. And so you can see how if a beginner is solely focused on drawing the lips and they don't understand the space in between the nose and the mouth, then they won't get a sense of the person. They'll have a well-drawn set of lips, but it'll be kind of floating on the lower half of the face. So just like the glabella in between the eyes is a really great landmark to settle those features, the philtrum in between the nose and the mouth is what's going to ground you so that you know that you can begin the nose and the mouth with confidence, because it would be in proportion, the spacing that you have set out.
So is there a landmark? The one thing I tend to do when I do this, and it's not about me, but I tend to get the fulcrum area either too far out or too far in. And I don't get it perfect. So do you compare it to a landmark, for instance, The back of the head, do you measure like from the back of the head to the fulcrum area, or how do you make sure you get your width right?
Well, to get the width in the entire head, it's good to establish just where the midpoint is. So with that, pardon me, with this tool that I talked to you before, it's just a quadrant sheet. We talked about getting the head top to bottom. So when
Yeah.
you start breaking it up sideways, just turn this sideways. And if the model's far away, just use smaller quadrants. And then, so what you want to do is find where the middle is. And I like using the skull as an example because we're talking about what leads us to the superficial landmarks of the portrait. So you find the middle of the face and then just keep breaking it down. So the idea is that you're trying to space out within the whole head where you're going to place the features before you just start looking at the features and drawing
Yeah.
them. So with the
So would that
Philtrum,
be the equivalent, would that be kind of the equivalent of sight size drawing, where you have a center line and then you're going out from there and measuring, or you're breaking it into little chunks first?
yeah, no, it would not be sight sizing. That would be different where you have the
Okay.
model set up and, a different distance
Okay.
from your subject, but it's just basically comparative measuring. So in
Yeah.
short, to get the mouth, what you want to do is between the nose and the chin, you just want to ask yourself, what is bigger, the area of the philtrum, the area of the both lips combined, or the area of the chin? And that breakup, which one's the biggest and smallest, that's different on everyone. In general, the idea of thirds is, relatively close for all of us, but the smaller you get in terms of features and spacing, that's what varies. And that's, an exact likeness is always what you want in a portrait. You don't want to have generic proportions because then just everyone's Barbie and Ken. You want to be as specific as you can and humble yourself to nature. So
I personally would rather be Ken. Well, you're such a fantastic teacher. I mean, the reason I'm asking these questions is because I really want to get them down and really understand them. And you've just pointed out two different things that I've never heard before in all the years of drawing and painting. So you're great. Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's keep going.
Oh, great. Okay. So again, going back to landmarks that are going to help you feel confident in starting the features and common mistakes. Going back to this skull, this is the zygomatic arc, and it comes from the outside the inner ear. So this dot is where you can see the inner ear on a person. And this is the value change that's going to bring us to the placement of the eye. And the reason why this is so important is a very common mistake in portraiture, and I'll look up here with this little demo, is that this value change of light to dark is often way too high. People put the cheekbones way too high. So what you want to do is look for this value change and say, can I imagine where the zygomatic arc is going into the ear? Let me find the ear. Let me see if I can see that value change leading me to the socket of the eye. And if you use a sighting stick, just to kind of guide you as you're placing your relationship of those features, again, it'll ground you so that you've made the socket large enough. And then the next thing that you want to keep in mind, again, with common mistakes, is the placement of the cheekbone after finding the zygomatic arc is important. And then if you continue, do you see how close it brings us to the tip of the nose? So it's not always exactly.
Are they almost always in alignment?
No, well, that's what I'm saying. It's not assuming you're eye level with the model, in a situation like this, and the model is sitting up straight. It's always very close. So what you want to do is use your sighting stick again to say, how close is it? What is specific about this model? And the common mistake is that the tip of the nose, like here, is drawn way down here, and the cheekbone is drawn way up here because people tend to think, the nose is long and they make it long and they separate the features too much. So in short, a really good rule of thumb is to just always find the zygomatic arc, and with your sighting stick, looking at your model, and then say, well, where's the inner ear? And where's the tip of the nose? And can I find the structure of the cheekbone in between those two? And if you kind of just make little marks before you draw any features, which one's higher, which one's lower, how close are they aligned, then, it'll already start looking like the person, because you're getting the structure of their skull.
So the inner ear is that hole in the skull. What'd you call
it? Well, this is the inner ear, and the bone coming out of it is the zygomatic arc.
Okay. But the hole there, so if I'm looking for the hole in the ear, that's going to tell me where I'm going to line up.
Yeah, exactly. Because we can't obviously always see the zygomatic arc if someone's, got fleshy face or something like that. So if you look for the inner ear and just say, well, what value changes are coming from that, it'll help guide you. Yeah, so you're not guessing, you're using that.
Yeah, my measuring stick, by the way, is a chopstick.
Well, that works just as well. I think this is a skewer, a barbecue skewer.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, a very good cheap sighting stick. So do you want to continue on to the next step? So again, just to recap, before we get to the next step, let me pull this closer. We have the glabella and the philtrum. So we want to establish those before we do eyes, nose, and mouth. And then the zygomatic arc will tie things together this way, from the inner ear to the tip of the nose. And again, using a sighting stick this way will help you just see how things are aligned, what's above, what's below. And that's going to get the structure of the skull. So when you are getting closer, you have those little marks down. To start with the features, I'm going to pull up another drawing.
I like your teddy bear.
My girls are teenagers now, and I still keep some of their toys out because I miss them when they were 6.
My kids are in college, and they took their stuffed toys with them.
Oh, really? Okay, so our next step here, this is about, getting smaller and smaller, closer and closer to the smaller details in the face. So these lines are just plumb lines. Before I was talking about using the sighting stick this way as a horizontal line to line things up. So the next step, once you get kind of the structure of those planes that we talked about, how light's hitting the head, then you want to hold it as a plumb line this way, your sighting stick. So what, again, common mistakes, what students do often is hold it like this, as if they're measuring. And then what happens is it can turn and you don't realize it's at an angle. So when you're using your sighting stick as a plumb line, you hold it at the top and let gravity take it. And where it falls, you can be confident that that's an absolutely straight line.
Great tip.
So here what I'm doing is showing you that with a straight line, look how different these people are from, again, this is the glabella. I'm dropping a plumb line and just seeing where the beginning of the mouth is. So on this model, they're kind of lined up. And if I draw,
that's something you don't usually see, is the forehead and the lower part lining up.
Yeah, it's kind of different every time. That's why you want to know where these things are before you draw them out, right? So here, this is again the glabella, and if I drop a plumb line, the entire mouth is in front of that plumb line. So you can see how, for beginners, if they just drew the mouth and stared at it, and just drew the eye and stared at it, that no matter, even if they drew it beautifully, if they drew those features beautifully, but they weren't lined up, it wouldn't get the likeness to the person. So on this one, we have another plumb line, the mouth is in front. And then here, we're just looking at the relationship of the lips and the nose. The lips here are before and the nose is back. So basically just lining things up with plumb lines starts to refine those smaller shapes. If you look over here, let's see what this one, I encourage students to work with Vine because you can touch out lines and mistakes really easily.
Vine charcoal.
Yeah, Vine charcoal. So like on this paper, you see I'm just touching it and then some of the value is coming out. So it's very merciful. So you can, when you're drawing, use use Vine, and then just a tissue or your finger can touch out any mistakes, and then start off with these structural lines. So here we have more of a, not a profile, of straight on view, and I'm raising plumb lines again to see where each feature begins and ends in relation to those plumb lines. So on the face, there are 8 points that you always want to land before you draw any feature, and that's basically a point on the outside of each feature. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just a point on the outside of each feature. And if you drop a plumb line and make sure that you are understanding where one feature ends in relation to where another feature begins, that'll help you get very difficult things, like in this case, a 3/4 view. That can be a very challenging thing to draw. Foreshortening in the face is very challenging.
Can you
So
explain
again,
what foreshortening means?
well, basically, foreshortening is when something is not straight on and easy to draw, when something's kind of coming towards you and shortened in a way, rather than
So if
straight
you're
on.
looking, if foreshortening for a lot of people, when they, in the old days, the classic old days, if there was a portrait that was going to hang high, and they know it was going to hang high, they would change the proportions based on the eye level of the viewer.
Yes. Yes, and I think the statue of David did that. Michelangelo's David, the head is really large in relation to the feet. So so yeah, the foreshortening can be a challenging thing. So this is a way of looking at it and not doing generic proportions, but trying to get everything lined up before you start the features. Yeah.
If
So
I
this.
were in New Orleans, if I were in New Orleans, I'd be knocking on your door today to get into your classes. You are so good at this.
Well, I would love to have you. You have to come to New Orleans. I'd make you some red beans and rice. It's the only thing I
love
cook,
red
but I
beans.
can do it well. Okay, so should we keep going
Yeah.
with this? Okay, so we
Yeah.
talked about getting things set up, the glabella, the philtrum, the zygomatic arc. The next step is just honing in on the smaller shapes. So you can see down here with this little demo, the shadow on the glabella leads us to the shadow in the socket and in the temple. And this plane change coming together, this large shape, is what helps get the, again, the character of the person and how the features are aligned. And if we look at this example, it's very different. We have the glabella receiving light rather than in shadow. So this is very clearly like a little triangle of light. So again, this is what a beginner would overlook. They're so worried about drawing the eye, they're not asking themselves, well, how big is this shape? Is this shape light or dark? And again, pardon me, it all goes back to the structure of the skull, because that's the language of all the superficial form of the head. So you want to get all that down and then go into the features. Let me find another example for you here.
Hey, I'm going to break this up. I'm going to break this up right now and take a break while you're looking for your other piece of paper. I got to tell you that Carol is such a good teacher. Everybody's like on the comments, hey, let's take a road trip to Louisiana. You can do that. And if you live nearby or you want to do that, you should definitely go, because I have a hunch that the way she explains things, like her students get it immediately, right? So it's just so good. But if you can't do that, Carol's going to be teaching on Realism Live, which is our online conference. Now, what is realism is a really big question I get all the time. Realism is what you can see and understand, right? So you see this bottle of water here, it looks like a bottle of water. It's realism. Now, there's lots of variations on realism, right? So in Carol's world, which is a Da Vinci-esque drawing, very academic, very perfect, that is realism. But if Max Ginsberg or Rose Franson were to paint this bottle, they'd do it very impressionistic, and that is also realism. So Realism Live covers a lot of different styles of realism, loose, tight, and a lot of different subjects. And so we really try to make it like all the things you really need to learn, like landscape painting, figure painting, portrait painting, drawing of people, architecture, etc. So it's kind of like the whole conference. It's called Realism Live, and I think we have a quick little video.
Have you ever wondered how some artists get such realistic quality in their work? Unbelievably beautiful portraits, stunning figures, and realistic-looking still lifes or florals? Painting or drawing realism takes your work to a whole new level. Whether you want tight, carefully rendered realistic paintings, or looser, more impressionistic realism, most high-level artists will tell you that painting is a skill that anyone can learn. If you follow a process, you can paint beautiful, realistic artwork. But where do you learn? You could spend $3,000 or more to attend a live workshop or convention, or you can learn from the world's finest realists from home for a fraction of the cost. At Realism Live, the world's first virtual online realism conference, you'll get 3 days of world-class artists demonstrating their techniques and processes. This is a comprehensive conference covering all the subjects you want to learn in portraiture, figures, landscapes, still life, cityscapes, color mixing, and more, taught by the world's leading artists. Not only will you learn their techniques, you'll have a chance to interact with instructors and get your questions answered. And you'll get to know other artists personally through our breakout sessions. And we'll even paint and draw together at the end of each day. Make new friends in our breakout sessions. Paint with hundreds of others. Get private access to our exclusive members group to become a part of our community. And learn to take your artwork to a higher level. Realism Live is 3 full days of painting and drawing instruction, November 10th through 12th. And for people who want to learn painting and drawing from scratch, start with our Beginner's Day 1-day atelier on November 9th. Soon you'll be painting faces, people, flowers, scenery, objects, and other subjects. You'll see your artwork improve faster as you learn from top artists and instructors from all over the world. Sign up today and join the world as we learn art together from these amazing artists. Glenn Vilppu, John Batoshanek, Alex Kelly, Ned Mueller, Terry Strickland, Dustin Van Welchel, Lisa Egley, Clyde Aspavig, Sarah Sedgwick, Rose Franson, Chuck Morris, Michelle Dunaway, Michael Mittler, Daniel Graves, Leona Shanks, Alexander Shanks, and many more to be announced. And it's hosted by fine art connoisseur and publisher Eric Rhodes and editor-in-chief Peter Trippi. And if you can't watch live, you can watch replays on your own time for up to a year. And it's 100% guaranteed. If after watching the first day, you don't feel it's right for you, let us know and we will refund 100% of your money. You'll be pleasantly surprised to realize just how much you can learn in such a short time. Realism Live, from the publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur magazine. Sign up today to reserve your seat now.
Well, we had a meeting this morning and we need to update that promo because I didn't think Carol's name was in there, and we got to get Carol in there and all the others that have added since then. Our guest today is Carol Peebles, and she's teaching us how to get a likeness. And Carol, you are a rock star. You watch the comments. Everybody's in love with you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. By the way, I like your guitar in the background. That looks like an 1894 Washburn.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what kind it is. But
That's a classic.
Sometimes we have musicians play when I have class in the Blue Weasel Club. So got to keep some instruments out to keep inspiration going.
Absolutely.
So I'll take you to the next step. How much time do we have left on this?
Oh, we've got another 15 minutes or so.
Okay, wonderful. So we talked before about getting the larger structure of the head without details on the features. We talked about the landmarks of the skull that will lead us to the smaller shapes within the head. And now we're going to start talking about how to get to the features themselves. We talked about getting plumb lines, which basically align the features, one in relation to another so that you don't have a really well drawn or painted feature kind of floating on the face. You have it attached where it should be in relation to others. So I don't know if you can see this. We have not really a detailed eye, but we have a dot of where the inner eye is and the outer eye, and how far that would be from the beginning of the nose where that's attached, and then the mouth itself. And always an important thing is to have these plumb lines drawn all the way down to the sternal notch, which is where the neck ends, because the neck is always a very important part of portraiture, because it shows if the person is relaxed or, you know, a little uptight, or the feeling of the connection of the head to the body is often overlooked. So you want to, anything that you draw within the face, always have a follow through line to the neck and say, where is the neck in relation to it? So again, you're not staring at one thing like an eye, a nose, or mouth and finishing it. Instead, you're always relating. You're saying, well, I want to draw the eye, but where is that eye in relation to the neck? You know, I'm looking at the nose, trying to draw the nose, but where is that nose in relation to the ear? So as students get better and better, again, they usually begin working like this, piecemeal, feature to feature. And then as students get better and better, then they work like this, a little bit on the eye, a little bit on the nose, a little bit on the neck. And you can see them kind of working around, and then they build the whole mass at one time rather than one part at a time. And that helps to get a likeness. So I'm just going to...
My teacher taught me when I was first learning portraiture, he taught me to move around constantly. He learned this at Florence, in that you know, he was a student of Ives Gamble and Frank Riley and Nedra Simi in Florence, and they always said, move around, don't stay in one place.
Yeah,
so I think that's why what you're suggesting is, otherwise you don't get the architecture of the whole.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And, you know, it's tricky because I'm talking about all these very specific measurements and details that can kind of drag you into a little area, and then you get caught there. So it's a juggling act. You have to remember what landmarks to look for, what relationships to look for, but at the same time, don't focus too much on them. Make yourself always work at the, you know, the entire subject. So I encourage students when they're working to stand back, work arm's length from your painting or your drawing. And the further you are away, then the more you're likely to look at large areas and consider the background values and that kind of thing. So it'll look more realistic. The rule of thumb I give is that if you can bend over and kiss your work, you are too familiar with your work. You have to have a respectful distance, and then, you know, that keeps things in perspective. So I'm going to just continue on with some ideas about features, okay?
Yeah.
So here we have just some quick little demos of eyes, nose, and mouth. But the most important thing about this, again, that students often overlook, is how the eyes come together. The gesture of the sockets is what's going to help get an expression, not the details in the eye. So notice with this one down here, there's a connection, a movement going from here, and then the eyes kind of round. So when you get into the get to the point where you're getting more focused on your details, you get the gesture of the eyes coming together. This is rounded. This one's much straighter. You can see that connection of those eyebrows, and then it comes down. So it's a more angular, an angular shape where you're going to be drawing the eyes. And then here you can see too, it's just, this is very different than this. So you want to, in general, work large to small. That's basically all I'm saying, is you say, well, how are things coming together before you look at the smaller parts within. So this would be
very helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Very
So
helpful. William Thornburg said this is the best of Art School Live ever. So thumbs up and applause for Carol. Carol, I think one of the things that we all tend to do is, and I know we do this as beginners, you know, we say, oh, a tree looks like a ball on a stick. I think one of the things we do when we learn portraiture and we learn kind of the architecture of the face, we tend to forget that some of these are going to have a rounded brow, others are going to have a straight brow, and
Mhm.
it's real easy to get stuck in our ways. So this is really a great exercise.
Good. Yeah. I think you're right. We want to always go away from generic, because that's what makes portraiture interesting, is, we're all so very different, even though we're similar. So it's that uniqueness that we want to capture. So let me show you with this. One last thought about this area is, before we were talking about the glabella. So you can see here how different it is on everyone. We have a little, a value change that is very high, that's starting the glabella to the nasal bone. And you can see how high that is in relation to the information of the eye. Whereas over here on this lower one, it's a longer, flatter surface that's receiving light. So this long light shape is what we were talking about before with the glabella, that's often overlooked if you're too worried about drawing each eye. But you can see how different it could be on everyone. And like I said, if you get a really good understanding of the glabella, the philtrum, the zygomatic arch, all those structural elements, it'll already start looking like a person. And the eyes, nose, and mouth will really just be a few details. So on this example, the next step would be, you can see here basically plumb lines again, relating things. So when you start really honing in on the features, you're drawing not the feature, but the shapes around it. So here again, we have a 3/4 view. What students would do here is, draw this, 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 and this, but instead you want to see that little kind of abstract shape in there. And always start off with where the cheekbone perimeter is in relation to the tip of the nose, because I've been teaching over 25 years now, and that's the one thing that always is a challenge, and we for whatever reason overlook it a lot. So if you can think of not drawing the features here, but drawing this little negative shape, the spaces in between the features, then that's just going to lock in exactly where the features have to go, so that even if you just have, one or two little details of the feature, like I said, it'll already start looking like the person.
You're so good. Carol, I'm gonna fly you out to Austin and invite you to do a video with us.
Oh,
And
lovely. Let's do it. I'm ready.
I'm
Let's
gonna
go.
make sure I'm there, and I'm gonna force you to give me a private lesson.
Okay. Yes, to
Or
that,
maybe I'll
definitely.
consider you on the video shoot.
Well, I wanted to show you a little bit of my studio and some of the more finished work. If we can get to
Please.
that before, if you would want that.
Yeah, well, we've got about 5 minutes. Let's do it.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm just gonna walk this around and show you some of the work that I have here. So this is a finished portrait, and then, as you've seen in my more finished work, I add embellishments like birds or a background. But again, just going in there and measuring, you can see the things we talked about, making sure that that structure is there. This is the Blue Easel Club, where I have classes in New Orleans, and I just have a lot of the finished portraits. We walk you over here. So these are examples of demos that I do for a class that are live models, and these are all done in pastel.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, these are all pastel, and they're all life size. So that's what I teach, is when working from life, to do more or less life size. So they're all about a head length and then one head length down. And they're all, just basically head and shoulders. But
now, what's the time frame on these demos, just to give us a sense of what you're accomplishing?
Well, let's see. I usually have a model for 2 or 3 mornings. And then the first 20 minutes, I'll draw in front of everyone. And then for the next 2 or 3 mornings, I'll teach a little, draw a little, teach a little, draw a little. So it's hard to say exactly, but I guess about 4 hours or something like that, with all of these 3 or 4 hours.
Spectacular. You're getting such incredible results in such a short time.
Okay, and we'll come one more. This is the other room. We have just more examples of life drawing. All of these are models that have been here, and we've been drawing since 2009. We have our 12-year anniversary coming up.
You think about the tens of thousands of hours of work. Wow. No wonder you're such a good teacher.
Thank you. Anyway, so this is I'll wrap up by showing this. This is where I work. I know sometimes artists like to see where other artists work, but these are the pastels, and then this is my latest piece, a mother and child. She was a model and brought her newborn in, so that was a lot of fun. And I added a bird and a baby bird. But this is where my setup is. Yeah, that's
Wow. Outstanding.
my last.
Outstanding. Well, Carol, you are a true rock star.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. This has been
You're gonna get a big
wonderful.
ego after today, because once you get what I would suggest you do is read the comments a little later tonight, because a lot of people watch later at night, and you've got a good audience today, but you'll have thousands, tens of thousands by tonight. And the comments are spectacular. I mean, everybody just loves your work, and you're such a great teacher. You just have taught us so much today. I agree. It's one of the best Art School Live sessions. You know, we started this at the beginning of COVID, and we have continued. We did 7 months, 7 days a week, and then we've continued 5 days a week since then. And you might get the prize for the most popular.
Oh, I love it. Great. And I'm looking forward to coming up there and seeing you.
Yeah, and you'll have to do my portrait for the magazine too, for Fine Art Connoisseur.
Oh, definitely.
We'll do it all at once. So
it's a deal.
Well, Carol, thank you so much. And we've put your website and your school and your atelier and all the other information into the comments if anybody wants it. And I know you do. And Carol is going to be teaching. What are you going to do on Realism Live?
I'm so excited to do this. I'm teaching hands and feet, because that's always a challenging thing for artists. And I always had trouble with it. And then when I learned how to do it, it just made me much more confident as an artist. So I think it's a very important thing for people to learn.
Outstanding. Outstanding. This is going to be fun. Well, Carol, thank you for being on today. We are honored with your presence, and congratulations to you and all your students and all the people that are part of your orbit. Really nice job today.
Thank you. It was really an honor being on your show, and I love all that you do. Thank you so much.
Well, we love doing it. Thank you, Carol. Our guest today, Carol Peebles. Wow, I think we're all just a little bit humbled and blown away by what a good teacher she is and what a great artist. So thank you, Carol. I want to remind you guys that you might want to see Carol on Realism Live. Just go to realismlive.com. And I want to remind you, if you didn't see this at the beginning of the show, we have a free ebook, 10 Steps to Become a High-Level Figure and Portrait Artist. Just go to realismlive.com/ebook and get that. And be sure to leave a comment so that you might win the prize of the value specs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to this program on YouTube or Facebook or otherwise. You can follow me at Eric Rhodes on Instagram, at Eric Rhodes on Facebook. If you can't get in there, at Eric Rhodes Publisher. Thanks again to Carol, and for all of you for watching. I know I noticed a lot of New Orleans people in the chat today. Welcome. We hope you'll join us every day. We're all over the map. I mean, we try it all. We have a lot of different things, and we're having a lot of fun here. And this, I think, let me check my calendar. Yes, this is my last live broadcast for a while, because I'm heading to New Zealand on Monday. I'm taking a group of painters there to paint, and we're going to have a great time. And if you follow on Instagram, Facebook, you'll see all the stuff that's going on. We have a lot going on. And so I am going to be pre-recorded or repeats for the rest of the next couple of weeks, but I'll be back. And thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazines and other things. We'll see you on the back end of this. Thanks. Bye-bye.